Hello, hello, hello. Thank you guys all for being here in the morning. Welcome to the technology or the, I always do that, the Telworx business series of technology. Um, as usual, I want to start out by thanking the Glendora and Whittier Chambers of Commerce for all of their supports, not only for this business series and series of workshops, but for all of the support that they provide to our local business communities. So thank you guys for that. Real quickly about Telworx. Every business needs technology. Everyone in your business, though, has a more productive use of their day than trying to figure out the technology that you should be using in your business and then sourcing and implementing it. That's why Telworx is the concierge or broker of business technology and telecommunication services. We go out and do all the heavy lifting. We work with a portfolio of more than 500 providers to help provide the exact right technology for your business so that you can be productive and successful and allow you to continue focusing on what you do best. So with that, we'll go ahead and get into the topic for today. And to set the stage a little bit, if we think about smartphones, they've been around since like the mid-90s. IBM introduced the first device called the Simon back in 1994. And since then, there have been a lot of different iterations of the smartphone. None of them all that memorable necessarily until 2007, January, Steve Jobs walked out on stage and introduced the iPhone. And from that point forward, smartphones became accessible to pretty much everyone. Everyone felt like they could and should be using them. Well, security assessments, independent third-party reviews have been around for a really long time as well. But it has only been recently when Passpoint Security kind of took a step back and said, we can do a better job than and provide a better product and service than what has traditionally been provided. So they have started doing things differently. They've gone from a capital expense model to an operational expense model, allowing companies to pay over time. They've gone from doing a one-time engagement to really a service, a continued engagement and agreement, so that it's not a one and done type situation for you. And they've started taking a look at other things besides just your perimeter and the security firewalls and whatnot. They're looking at things like dark web monitoring and our topic for today, which is ransomware and the impact that it's going to have on your network. So I'm really excited to have John Clausen and Mike Pearson from Passpoint with us today. John, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, so you're right. Passpoint Security, we've been around for about 5 years. Started out mostly with tactical engagements such as penetration testing and vulnerability scans. And that has evolved over the course of the last couple of years, especially into really providing a holistic set of services that equal a solution based on processes, right? So instead of just thinking about security as, okay, how many solutions, how many antivirus, how many firewalls, how many SIMs can I deploy to protect myself, thinking more about the ongoing process of visibility into what your security posture is, right? And so I alluded to this. I'm not sure if anybody else was on the call before when I was talking about this, but everybody can focus on those solutions and that security perimeter, but taking a different approach and looking at it essentially from the inside out rather than the outside in is what helped really Mike's team to come up with the idea of this ransomware impact assessment. Now, this is what we're going to go through is an actual assessment. So that's a service-based engagement, but it's delivered by the tool called Cymrix. So, in consulting work, a lot of these different engagements require, let's just say, a penetration test. Well, you've got to use 2 or 3 different tools to actually achieve the output that the customer is expecting in terms of the criticals, highs, and medium vulnerabilities that can be exploited, right? And so this tool, Cymrix, helps us deliver the actual assessment itself. So we would go through the steps, similar to any other consulting engagement with a kickoff, and we have kind of a pre-discovery call about critical assets, and then we determine who that patient zero is going to be. And Mike will go into patient zero in a little bit more detail here in just a second. And then we go through the back end processes on our end to get to basically collect and analyze the data that's necessary for the final deliverable, the final report that again is going to show a stakeholder really how exposed their critical data is to ransomware and specifically encryption from that ransomware. So before we go through this, I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Otherwise, we can kind of just start going through the deck, and we can pause for questions as we go through it as well. Everybody good?
Looks like we're good to go so far.
Okay. All right, Mike. I appreciate you muscling up here, and hopefully you're not too hopped up on Theraflu.
just a little bit. So do apologize if I have to pause and cough a couple of times here. So, but thanks everyone for joining. So let's just get right into it here. So real quick on the agenda, we're going to talk about a few different types of threats that are primarily impacting organizations these days. How does ransomware attack work in the real world? Give you a demonstration of the ransomware tooling around Cymrix and how that process works for showing you how a ransomware impact assessment would take place inside your organization, and then some Q&A at the end. All right, so obviously, ransomware is one of the biggest threats. It's by far, we talk to a lot of folks out there, whether they're chief information security officers or business owners. They say, one of the things that keeps them up at night is because they see it all over the news is the ransomware. And it's one of the biggest threats for small to medium businesses, small to medium enterprises, followed quickly by phishing. And phishing typically is also called a business email compromise. About 49% of those breaches are the result of employees who fall prey to a phishing attack. If you don't know what phishing is, that's when someone is sending you spammy email, trying to make it look like it's legitimate email. Usually involves having you go to a specific link or downloading some type of document to review it, at which point you're going to get infected. And then work from home is really, all throughout the pandemic, we're still, a lot of us, or many of us are still in a work from home environment. And that has increased what we call the surface area of the attack surface. So there's a lot more endpoints and ways for the attacks to be able to actually get into your business. The home workers may not have the same level of sophisticated security controls in place that would allow them to prevent from being phished or being hacked in any other ways. So that has definitely increased. All right, so let's jump into how basic ransomware attack works. Usually starts with a phish. About 90% of the attack vectors that we're seeing right now for ransomware do originate with them phishing your employees. So the threat actor is going to send an email with like a malicious link or a malicious file that contains some malicious macros. Lots of different ways, they're getting better at it. It used to be pretty obvious how to find these things, bad English in the emails, a lot of misspellings, things like that, because a lot of the attackers, English is not their primary language. And we've gotten a little bit better at our spam filters to be able to detect those and block them, but they're getting better, and it's an ongoing arms race. So typically the threat actor is going to identify who they want to phish. They're going to phish your employees. It will bypass spam filters and get into the user's inbox. Ultimately the user receives that malicious email and either clicks on the link or downloads that file. That's the person we're calling patient zero. So that is the origination of the infection within inside your environment. And you'll hear a lot of terms here that, you know, cybersecurity borrows a lot of terms from military and medical fields. So that's why we call them patient zero, which is typically that first patient who, you know, who was the first person that caught COVID, you know, right? And that was patient zero. And so we often try to find both in the, you know, cyber world and in the real world who patient zero was, to try to understand what the root cause of the infection was. But anyway, you know, antivirus fails to block the threat. Very typical. You know, basic antivirus is really not very effective at dealing with these sophisticated threats. That's because there's like 70,000 new antivirus or virus variants coming out per day. And a lot of the vendors just can't keep up to date with all the new variants that are coming out. You think we have it bad with, you know, Omicron. That's just the 5th variant. You know, there's 70,000 variants of different types of computer viruses coming out per day. So that virus or malware, XYZXE, gets delivered and executed. And that's where and I'll get into this in a few minutes, where we really start with the ransomware impact assessment. We make the assumption that steps 1 through 4 here are just going to happen. And then we work with your organization to start at step 5 to see what really takes place over the next few steps here. So in step 6, basically what's going to happen is the first time the infection occurs on that single end user, that patient zero, the ransomware is going to try to figure out where it is. You know, what did it actually get into? So what type of computer system is it on? What type of files are there? What type of users are there? And it does all this through various techniques, tactics, and procedures that allow it to start really getting an understanding about the environment that it's currently living in. And then it tries to do what we call living off the land. It'll try to laterally move throughout your organization and to copy itself over to other systems within inside your network. And it does that by utilizing capture credentials, because it's able to actually dump all of those. It's able to, you know, look at clear text passwords that are saved on. It's able to look at NTLM hashes, which are hashed passwords, and it's able to use all of that to then try to laterally move throughout the network and to infect other computers. And then when it gets as far and wide as it can spread, it goes to the next step here, and that's when it actually starts encrypting the data. And oftentimes, there's a pretty big delta in time between step 6 and step 7. The average, we call it the dwell time. The average dwell time today is over 180 days. So that means you got infected 180 days ago before that ransomware event takes place. And that's average across all industries and all business sizes. So that's when you get this note. Typically is going to pop up on your computer screen. It says, we've encrypted all your files. Please send, 80 Bitcoin to, this address, and we will gladly send you the decryption keys. And at that point, you're really at a loss. It's they have just ransomed you. They now hold the keys to the kingdom of your protected data files. If you don't have good backups and you haven't tested those backups in a long time, it's going to be hard to recover. Depends upon how frequently you're making backups. If you're doing daily snapshots versus weekly or monthly, so what's going to be your restore point there? How much data are you going to lose if you try to just actually go back and restore for backups? And a lot of times that doesn't fix it, because they're pretty wily. They're able a lot of times to actually get into your backups and encrypt your backups as well. So it's kind of scary. But I'll pause here real quick. Any questions on how ransomware works? Yep. Okay.
I do have a question as far as the size of customers, like maybe a range of like what size companies are doing this ransomware
that are being affected by ransomware,
or even like that are already participating in having these analyses done.
So I can take that. We went to market with this in January. So far, all of our customers have been in the mid-market, I would say mid-market to small, but now, and that's by design, right? Because we wanted to make sure that, once we um, went or expanded into more enterprise type customers, we wanted to make sure all of the functionality was properly working, right? So the first, we had a couple early adopters that we gave some, special pricing, quote unquote, to that kind of acted as our guinea pigs, and so we went through that, got through whatever bugs or whatever functionalities that were not performing up to the level that we wanted them to. And so now, now that we're basically on track um, to be expanding to more enterprise customers. And so with that, I'll say that we have gone through a demo of the product with a Fortune 100 company as of, I think we did it on Friday or Thursday of last week, and they are definitely going down the path of procuring and having this be part of their quote unquote cybersecurity arsenal, if you will. So, and we've also been working with and talking to some other large customers and healthcare systems that have anywhere between 5,000 and 50,000 IPs. So I know that's a long-winded way of answering your question, but the threat of ransomware is real to every size business out there. I mean, the whole adage of people thinking that they were just too small to get hit with ransomware. Well, they're the easiest targets, right? And they're the ones that are being affected the most these days. But obviously, the real lucrative type of customers, i.e. enterprise customers, while they spend a lot of money on, like I said, the solutions to try to prevent these attacks, there's always a weak link, right? And so that is why they're very interested in this as well. So this solution and the overall service can be applicable to any size business at this point.
Yep. Thanks, John. And the price for the ransom varies as well, because they actually know the size of the business by the number of files and computers that reports back to them as being encrypted. So it can be anywhere as small as a single Bitcoin for a very small, mom and pop operation, which in today's market's about $40,000, up to several hundred Bitcoins, so in the millions of dollars. So it just depends on the size of the organization. Okay, I mentioned earlier techniques, tactics, and procedures. This is a map that's produced by MITRE Corporation, which is a company that works very closely with DARPA and other defense research projects, and they've actually mapped out what they call the MITRE attack map, which maps out the techniques, tactics, and procedures that various bad actors and various pieces of malware utilize through in order to be able to actually gain access to the systems, to do data storage, to do data collection, all the way through to the ransomware and encryption capabilities there. And I bring that up, and you'll see in a minute when I jump into the demo here, because we actually follow this path pretty strictly for building out what we want our harmless ransomware to look like. Okay, so what we did is, we took a look at, a lot of the problems that we're facing the organization out there. We said, what is, aside from the fact that ransomware could potentially infect your organization, do you know how far and wide it would spread inside your organization? What access it would get to? What files would actually be encrypted in case you were to suffer from one of these types of breaches? And a lot of organizations just don't know. They don't know, the different levels of access that different users have. They don't map that on a regular basis. They don't necessarily know where all of their files are living. They have general ideas, with the databases and stuff like that, but stuff being copied and moved to various locations. If they haven't deployed some type of DLP, data leakage prevention technology, to actually be able to analyze that, they just don't know. So we went down the road to be able to provide a service to show you that thorough blast radius. How far and wide could a event like this spread with inside your organization? And that's where we came up with the ransomware impact analysis. So in the situation I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, we actually go in and configure the type of attack to map up against the MITRE attack framework. We can show how far and wide it's going to spread, what type of files we're going to get infected, and then provide a step-by-step reporting capability so that at the end of the day, you can see what worked. In other words, what security technologies did you have in place that were able to prevent some of the actions from taking place? What didn't work? So what were we able to get around? The typical ransomware would be able to get around, and to give you an idea of how to firm up your defenses there so that you can actually see where all these files are, where they're living, and how they were accessed. So you have an understanding of what type of additional security controls you need to put in place in order to protect it. Okay, now I'm going to jump over into the demo portion. Any questions before I do that? We're done with the demo, so I'm perfectly happy to open it up to a Q&A. Any questions you have?
We got a quiet crowd today, Mike. Hopefully everybody understands everything. But let me ask, Sue, John, whoever else might want to chime in. I mean, do you guys see how this would be valuable to your customers? Again, this is it's a complementary service to some of the services that we provide, such as the pen testing and other things. But a lot of those type of assessments are mandated. This is not mandated yet, but I will assure you that this is going to give more value or provide more value to end customers than just doing a snapshot in time, i.e. a pen test, right? So hopefully you guys see how this could be valuable to businesses of all sizes.
So I have a couple of things here. One, something that hasn't really come up too much in this presentation, but I know is really an important aspect of what Passpoint security does, is you guys are acting as an independent third-party assessor. You are not going to come in and you're basically going to give a homework assignment once this is all done and saying that here's the report we got, here are the things you guys need to fix as an organization.
Yep.
Now you guys are responsible for fixing them. Passpoint security is not going to come in and actually fix anything within your network. John, would you speak to why that is so important?
Yeah, I mean, well, again, you're right. We are third-party assessors, and almost all regulatory bodies require that that environments, IT environments, be in the security posture around them be assessed by a third party. Because if you think about it, the people that are, if it's internal or if it's a outsourced, managed security or managed service provider, they can't assess themselves. What's the saying where the fox in the hen house or whatever? But I don't remember exactly what. But you can't assess your own security. I mean, you can, but it's not going to provide you with any value because you're just doing a checkbox on yourself, right? And so instead, you have to have somebody come in and actually hold you accountable. It's just like an audit, right? And hold you accountable for the deficiencies that they or we find within that security posture. And you're right, we will give them guidance on how to remediate, but we're not going to do the remediation ourselves. And this particular tool and penetration testing and everything else that we offer really helps organizations, kind of get to that point of, focusing. I mean, Mike alluded to it. There's 70,000 variants detected every single day. You'll never be able to keep up with that. I don't care how big your organization is or how much money it has. You'll never be able to keep up with that kind of level of, risk. And so we are there to help you get to that point of remediation that much faster, and thus, lowering your risk again, we do this on an ongoing basis, or at least we suggest to do this in an ongoing basis, meaning all of our services, which we will, our pricing model, and John alluded to it a little bit earlier, that we bundle these services and then offer it on an OpEx model. So what I mean by that is, all of these different types of assessments are very beneficial, but they're even more beneficial if you do them on an ongoing basis, as opposed to that snapshot in time. You could do a penetration test, or you could do one of these ransomware impact analysis, and 2 months later get hit by the latest and greatest malware variant out there. It happens. So the best way to protect yourself is to look at security as an ongoing process, and assessing your posture is a huge part of that. It works hand in hand with the remediation, right? I mean, what is an organization going to do about remediation if they don't even know where to start, right? They're just going to keep chasing their tail. And so that's where the real value comes in with this. And if we bundle those services and we do, intermittent, let's say it quarterly, or exchange different quarters between penetration tests, scans, phishing exercises, and this ransomware impact assessment or analysis, you're giving yourself the best possible chance at avoiding breaches than you would if you just went the traditional route, which is, okay, we've got to check a box and do a penetration test next month, and then we're done. And, then we'll do some remediation, then we think we're fine. And as everybody knows, that's not how it works anymore.
Cool, thank you. And then I know one other thing that we had discussed previously, John, is how the services specifically that you guys are providing are going to be able to impact organizations' ability to get things like cybersecurity insurance and those sorts of things. Would you mind touching on that for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So when these ransomware attacks happen that we hear about in the news, generally speaking, especially if they're a bigger organization, they're not having to pay the ransomware. The cybersecurity insurance firm is. And so what we've seen and what we've heard is that, and we've seen evidence of this, is that cyber insurance companies are now doubling their premiums. It's going through the roof because so many ransomware attacks are happening, and so as you can imagine, they're going to raise their premiums to the highest levels they can to offset these these ransom payments that they have to make, right? And so, yes, a lot of cybersecurity insurance companies are mandating some of our core services, such as the penetration testing, on an ongoing basis. I mean, it used to be that you just had to do one penetration test a year. Now we're seeing that some cyber insurance companies are mandating that you do 3 or 4, depending on, certain things such as, are you PCI compliant, or, how big your organization, or what type of data that you're storing, that sort of thing. And so the goal here is to, with our, all of our services, bundling all of those, and especially with the ransomware impact assessment, you proactively go to your cyber insurance company and say, look what I'm doing to protect ourselves and to protect ultimately the insurance company as well. And the idea being that, and it's not going to happen overnight, but we've spoken to a lot of thought leaders and people that are very well connected in that space, that cybersecurity insurance space, and some of these bigger organizations that we talk to that are literally, they have thousands and thousands of IPs under their purview. They have said to us that they can't wait to get a hold of this so they can show it to their cyber insurance company, because we believe that in probably a year to a year and a half's time, solutions or service such as the ransomware impact assessment will be highly encouraged, if not mandated. So we're kind of getting ahead of the game here a little bit. Now, I will say there are other organizations that do provide a type of ransomware impact assessment Ours is different because it's agent based, and we've done a lot of things functionality wise that that these other organizations can't do. And so, again, we feel like this is, we don't just feel, we know that this is a very unique solution, and that, it will be well received once you get it in front of customers, especially customers that have that IT and security knowledge base.
Cool, thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions, any comments, concerns? You guys have two major experts. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, John. Speaking on what you just spoke about, I have a few clients that I don't sell. I'm in insurance, and so I don't sell a lot of cyber insurance policies, but I do have some companies that are starting to look for that. They're looking to get it. And so if they have something like this in place, are you saying that it's mandatory for them by the cyber insurance companies, or it should reduce their premiums if they have it? Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, I mean, so this is so new that we haven't gone to market with the quote unquote cybersecurity insurance providers yet. We have talked to some, high level, and let them know that this is coming, and they've been very interested in it. But no, it's not mandated yet because a lot of cyber insurance companies just don't know it's out there yet. And so what I'm saying is that if you're in the insurance space and you bring this solution, we do a demo for a cyber insurance company, it would be our best guess that they would see this and then start probably wanting to mandate it for their customers to be able to gain that insurance.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just right now it's a value add, but in a year and a half's time, 2 years time, you're going to see other providers that are attempting to do something like this. And we've been at it for 2 years, so we are pretty ahead of the game in terms of the software itself and the functionality and everything else. So we've got a lot of momentum with that, and at the end of the day, the solution is only as good as the people that develop it, and the I keep saying knowledge base, but Mike Pearson and his team have such extensive experience that they know all of the little intricacies and nuances that a cyber insurance company or a CISO or a CIO are looking for that replicate an actual ransomware attack, again, with the idea of being as prepared as possible and doing that remediation on your most exposed endpoints or systems in the quickest way possible before the proverbial, it's not if it's going to happen, it's when. And so it's a race against, when. And so that's what this tool is intended to do. And cyber insurance companies are going to be at the forefront of having interest in this because of the amount of risk that it alleviates.
It kind of sounds like, from the standpoint of cyber, like if I'm insuring a restaurant, having safety mats in the kitchen, it's not a requirement, but it looks good to the underwriters. It looks good. You're a lower risk. So it kind of sounds like it's in that same space.
I like the analogy. Yep. And again, I mean, it's hard to predict whether or not it will be mandated across the board, but I mean, insurance companies are in the business of mitigating and minimizing risk, and this tool does nothing but minimize and mitigate risk.
Well, one other thought just occurred to me. I'll throw out there is, even if this never got mandated across, by insurance providers or anything like that, just from a business standpoint, would you be worse off if you were conducting these sorts of assessments on a regular basis and were just taking steps to make sure that you were minimizing your attack service? and making sure that you were doing everything you could to protect your business?
Yeah, let me jump in there and address that real quick. So and just to be clear, when we're talking about mandates, typically we're referring to mandates that are either industry based, like PCI for credit card processing, or HIPAA, which is government based for the Information Portability Act. So those are like hard mandates, right, that require you to do something. But also, if you want to just follow good practices, like NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, has the cybersecurity framework, which is guided just for small to medium businesses on how to have a better cybersecurity framework in place for their organization. And inside of there, it does specifically say to test for your resilience against ransomware. It doesn't tell you how to do it, but it tells you should do it if you want to follow best practices. So yeah, just to address that in kind of two different ways there, John, is not every mandate is something that is a lock hard that you have to absolutely follow. Some of them are best case recommendations or best practice recommendations, and yeah, it is considered best practice to regularly test the effectiveness of the security controls on your network. And by security controls, those can be technical security controls like firewalls, antivirus, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems. They can also be, administrative, like your policies and procedures, right? So it's that kind of gets all lumped together in security controls. But did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Does anyone else have any other thoughts, questions, concerns?
I did have one thing that came up last week, and I got a call from a connection in Nashville, and there was a university that got caught in ransomware, and they are completely down. Their internet is down for the last 10 weeks. They are not able to process payroll. The students are not able to access Wi-Fi or get to their tuition reports. And, but the staff and the leadership at the university has not talked to anyone about it. It was an alumni that started to sense that they were probably the victims of ransomware because everyone's scared. And it's been about 10 weeks now and they're still locked. And I mean, at this point, it's a disaster recovery situation where hopefully they're going to be able to get access to that data. And I'm not sure if they're going to pay the ransomware, but apparently, they're completely vulnerable and the hackers have access to all of that data and also the money that they have as well. So it's just a small university, private university, massive impact. The students are ready to do a protest, and because no one's talking about why this is happening. But I do think that this is happening all the time and no one's talking about it. So anyway,
yeah, there's probably thousands of attacks per day. And you probably only hear about the high profile ones, to your point. I mean, but a small university that isn't spending a whole lot of money on their security solutions and controls and services and everything like that, they're a prime target. And guess what? They've got money, and I mean, it can be devastating to organizations of all sizes. So that's why this, I hate to say, well, if they'd have done a ransomware impact assessment 6 months ago or whatever it is, the chances of that happening are minimized. But that's the reality of it, right? I mean, it used to be that nobody, and I think I said this in the beginning, it used to be the narrative was, oh, we're too small to get hit, or we're too small we're not going to be a target. And that's just not the case anymore. Every single organization is a target if you're storing data of any And so, I mean, that's a unfortunate story, but that is the reality of the you know the security war going on today. Information security war, I should say.